Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're trying out a genuinely fascinating linguistic and thematic experiment. We are taking a completely chaotic compilation of raw 90s and 2000s action movie dialogue, specifically pulling from a heavy-hitting supercut by the creator at ActionReload, and we're going to break the whole thing down. Because think about it, when you strip away the explosions, the martial arts, and the muzzle flashes, what are these characters actually saying to each other? By taking these disjointed, profane, and just utterly intense lines and putting them into a highly structured, analytical taxonomy, we can literally uncover the secret DNA of the modern action thriller.
Okay, let's look at our roadmap for making sense of this explosive material. We'll be hitting the anatomy of a threat, the cop interrogation, strange medical logic, heists and rivalries, and capping it off with the tactical getaway.
All right, starting right off with Section 1, Anatomy of a Threat. This is all about escalating the psychological stakes.
Now, notice how these tactics chart a precise, almost clinical escalation of a psychological breakdown. Step 1 establishes vulnerability by targeting the kid. Step 2 isolates a secondary target, the girlfriend, specifically calling out if she's home all by herself. But Step 3, that climax is where the true cinematic menace really lies. The antagonist paints this vivid, twisted domestic picture of reading a bedtime story. It's not just a threat of physical violence anymore. It's a complete invasion of the hero's private sanctuary. It's engineered entirely to force the hero into making a reckless, emotional mistake.
And you know exactly where this leads, right? The antagonist's promise to tell a bedtime story brilliantly sets up the inevitable, dramatic payoff. I mean, you literally cannot introduce a threat about a bedtime story in an action movie without the hero ultimately reclaiming that exact narrative. The hero flips the script, taking the villain's ultimate threat and turning it into their own triumphant closing statement. The loop is closed, and that psychological warfare completely backfires.
Moving on to Section 2, the cop interrogation. We're looking at textbook procedure versus on-the-ground reality.
You've got to love the hilarious comedic contrast here. The stated, polite ideal of nicely canvassing areas instantly clashes with the blunt force methodology actually deployed, "You want to talk to my fist." It tells us everything we really need to know about how justice works in this cinematic universe. Rules are just a formality, and physical force is pretty much the only language anyone actually speaks.
So how do suspects react to this? Well, suspects in this universe are remarkably resilient and almost never impressed by aggressive interrogation tactics. The cop tries to establish this casual dominance with "my man Leon," and Leon shuts it down instantly. It highlights this really fascinating stalemate. The cops rely entirely on intimidation, but the criminals are completely desensitized to it, which just leads to a perpetual cycle of escalating blunt force trauma.
Okay, stepping away from the violence for a quick second, let's get into Section 3, Strange Medical Logic. Specifically, pseudoscience and the divine.
If we look at the dialogue like it's a literal medical textbook, we uncover this highly dubious but amazing piece of pharmacological logic. The raw dialogue specifically features a character stating they are giving him ketamine because ketamine counteracts adrenaline. Now, in the real world, this is a profound misunderstanding of anesthetics, but in the heightened reality of the action thriller, biology bends to the needs of the plot. You need a fast way to stop an adrenaline-fueled junkie? Boom! Action movie ketamine is your narrative silver bullet.
And then, right in the middle of all the profane shootouts and back-alley interrogations, you get this extreme God-complex monologue. Characters will suddenly elevate their speech to the realm of the mythical. They aren't just surviving, they've been tapped on the shoulder by God. They wield the sword of the king. It injects this wild, almost Shakespearean grandeur right into the middle of a dingy concrete shootout.
It's a sudden, jarring pivot from extreme violence to profound, mirrored self-reflection. It proves these characters are just wildly unpredictable. One minute someone is demanding a bloody shootout, and the literally next minute they're gazing into a mirror lamenting their duty to their parishioners. It shows that action protagonists, and the antagonists for that matter, often view themselves as tragic, burdened saviors rather than just regular guys with guns.
Zooming out a bit for Section 4, Heists and Rivalries. Here we'll look at gang dynamics and explicit negotiations.
This quote right here, this acts as the ultimate call to action, setting the exact tone for the aggressive posturing required in heist crews. There's zero room for hesitation. In the criminal underworld we're looking at, respect is purely transactional, and it is demanded immediately. This line basically forces compliance to sheer vulgar machismo, establishing the crew's hierarchy in a single breath.
When you look at the chaotic aftermath of a job, a very clear life cycle actually emerges. First, you've got the celebration of the loot, real nice haul.
But that victory is super fleeting. Almost immediately, the dialogue shifts to the brutal economics of survival, like paying for protection and dealing with explicit racist gang rivalries. And finally, we hit the territorial defense. Think you could come into our hood and diss us? It perfectly maps the life cycle of a cinematic heist. You get the temporary high of the score, rapidly followed by the violent consequences of doing business with other factions.
And finally, Section 5, the tactical getaway, moving from stealth to absolute chaos. I absolutely love this part. It is fascinating to map out this rapid-fire, seemingly nonsensical radio chatter and reveal a surprisingly clear, step-by-step operational checklist. I mean, out of context, tigers and mouse, what's happening at the beehive sounds like total gibberish, but when you break it down, you see the structure. First, the perimeter check via code words, then tracking enemy movement with the eagle. Next is the timing synchronization with the change of the guard. Then you disable the security infrastructure. And finally, the execution command, go in now. It demonstrates that beneath all that noisy veneer, there is a rigid, thrilling rhythm to the action movie infiltration scene. Then, as the operation inevitably goes loud, we just have to pause and appreciate this incredibly meta moment of deadpan observation happening right in the middle of a gunfight. While alarms are blaring and people are screaming for backup, a character actually takes a split second to critique the violence on television. It's such a brilliant tension breaker. It gives the viewer a momentary, surreal detachment before plunging right back into the vehicular carnage.
Because the climax of this dialogue always devolves into automotive combat, breaking down into these precise, frantic steps. The stealth is completely gone, and survival depends entirely on split-second reactions. Step 1, the proximity alert, identifying the threat on the left. Step 2, the challenge issued, escalating the situation into a deadly game of chicken. And Step 3, the desperate evasive maneuver, screaming, "Take the wheel!" It's basically a microcosm of the entire action genre, a constant escalation from awareness to confrontation to frantic, violent resolution.
So, I want to leave you with this thought to ponder the next time you find yourself watching one of these explosive cinematic spectacles. We've managed to map out the threats, the strange medical logic, and the tactical steps hidden inside this wall of noise. But ultimately, does the dialogue actually matter, or is it merely rhythmic percussion driving us toward the next set piece? Thank you so much for exploring this taxonomy of chaos with me today in this explainer. Until next time, keep your eyes open and stay curious.
Hello, welcome to Hollywood movie story, guys. So please subscribe and support for me more. And hey YouTube, this my activities is short, small and creativity. So guys, full watching my Hollywood movie story, and thank you for hey YouTube. Now is mass content is my content. I am activity this okay.